Hello, and welcome to the Behind the Inspiration podcast. I am your host, Ken Waller. And I would like to really introduce somebody that's very important, a friend of mine that I met. And I want to make sure that you understand that, this show is about motivation, encouragement, and to be able to inspire others. So again, I just want to say thank you to Miss Faizun Kamal, who actually is an award-winning franchise coach, nationally renowned public speaker, and the best-selling author. As a CEO, she's a CEO, finance pro. Faizun coaches people nationwide on making the transition from employee to entrepreneur. By the way, you got to get her bestseller book. Her bestseller book is The Right Franchise for You. Escape the 9-to-5, generate wealth, and live life on your terms. So again, I just want to say thank you, Faizun, for joining the Behind the Inspiration podcast. And without any more hesitation, I'd like to again say good morning. And I'm just so glad that you decided to join. Thank you.
And good morning, my friend. It's so lovely to be here with you. I was delighted when we connected. I think we were kindred souls without realizing we were kindred souls. I'm delighted and I'm honored to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was reading your information and I was really inspired just by reading some of your story. One of the biggest things that I always try to help my listeners understand, my guests, is what kind of inspired you to go the route that you've gone, because you were in corporate America for a lengthy period of time. So what really inspired you to start this particular business?
Wow. Start off with a heavy hitting question. Why don't you? Okay. So, the answer is quite simple, Ken. I think my inspiration stemmed from my desperation. Right? Think about it. And I think fundamentally, for human beings, I think it's either inspiration or it's desperation that gives us the impetus to move forward. In my case, it was the desperation piece of it. As you mentioned in the intro, I was in corporate America for about 8.5 years. With a Fortune 15 company, it's an iconic American brand. We know the brand by name. At least half of us in this country use its products and services. And I was honored to be a part of the team when I came on. And the work that I did was important for the end users, the stakeholders that the company had. But in the midst of all of that, Ken, it didn't take me very long to realize that was not my path. It was a great path. And it is a great path for a lot of people. It just was not the path for me. And so, year after year, I spent as an employee in this company, and I did a lot of really good stuff. And in the midst of all of this, I kept asking myself, where does this lead me to? Where do I go from here? I didn't quite know what my path looked like, but I knew that once I found it, I would immediately recognize it. So for me, that's really what prompted me becoming who I am now, starting the company, the Franchise Pros, that I run now, working with the clients that I do. That, in a nutshell, was my journey from being an employee in corporate America to saying, nope, this is not what's for me, and then leaving that world entirely behind me to say, I'm ready to kind of forge my own path forward.
So Faizun, could you tell our listeners what exactly is it that you do as far as the actual franchise end of it? How to choose the correct franchise? Basically, what is the Franchise Pros, if you could?
Absolutely, Ken. Thank you so much again. At the Franchise Pros, we actually do two very specific things for our clients. The first piece is what the book that you mentioned that came out last year, that's what the book is about. And this first piece of the work is where I work with someone who, for whatever reason, is ready to leave corporate. They're ready to leave their jobs behind. They may have thought about starting a business, but for whatever reason, Ken, they didn't do it. Whether they were scared, whether they didn't have the information, it just never happened. Those are the people who come to me and say, can you help me find the right, what I call the perfect fit franchise for me, given my background, given my skill sets, given my blind spots. There are thousands of franchises out there. Which one would be the right one for me? That's the first piece of work that I do. The second piece of the work I do with other clients, and these clients are typically entrepreneurs themselves, they're business owners. I take their existing business and I turn that existing business into a national franchise brand. So those are the two, if you will, two ends of the spectrum that I deal with. For our purposes, for our conversation, that first piece, I partner with, at this point, several hundred franchise brands. Many of them are global brands that we know by name. Many are national brands we know by name. And then there are many others that are what we call emerging franchises. They are in that sort of early stage of growth. There's a lot of growth to be had. They may be in one part of the country, but not other. So there's a good mix. In terms of the kinds of franchises I work with, and this is a question I get all the time, where people will say, a franchise is all about burgers and fries, right? That's all that there is. Because of course, you know who they're thinking of, the Golden Arches, right? McDonald's. Yes. While food is just one category, Ken, my friend, there are hundreds. Automotive, retail, children, education, senior care, fitness, wellness. I mean, the list goes on and on. If you can think it, I'm probably working with them, is the way I like to say it. I take my clients through a 6-step process, and I talk about this in great detail in the book. It's a 6-step process that I have now put hundreds of people through that is intended to help you figure out, given who you are, where you are right now, understanding what is that one business out there that allows me to meet, to address, to fulfill my personal, professional, financial, and lifestyle goals, whatever those goals might be. So I hope that answers the question you were asking.
And it did. And, that's very interesting concept that you have because, you mentioned earlier, a lot of people want to go into business or can't identify a specific business based on the fact that they don't know what it is. However, your approach is certainly one I'm sure that's very effective, because you have to identify what it is you want to do, identify I always say identify your target market. That's kind of the term that I use, but you also have to understand, and I think you hit on another point, is what are you looking to get out of it? I think it's probably one of the biggest things. A lot of times people say, I want money, I want flexibility, I want all those things. So, again, when you look at it from the side of the house, as you being their particular consultant, what happens when they get all over the place and they're ready to quit? How do you inspire them? How do you motivate them? Like you mentioned, through all their chaos. How do you get them back on track? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that things start going and they're ready to quit. So what is it that you do to kind of inspire them and motivate them to keep going?
Oh, I love that question, Ken. And what a wonderfully loaded question you asked too. In my work, I find really all of the issues that somebody can potentially have, it boils down to just one word: fear. That's it.
Wow.
Fear of change, fear of actually being successful at this thing. Fear of, if I go out there, I leave my old world behind. Fear of leaving people, friends, family behind. I mean, all sorts of stuff start happening. I say 3 things to my clients, typically, in no order of importance. Number 1, say yes before you're ready. I have lived by that all through my career. Say yes before you are ready. Ken, I find that this is an issue, my friend, that I think more women than men typically tend to have. Women, we want 95% of that thing to be something that we know, that we are familiar with, that we're good at, before we will say yes to it. Think of what women do when they're looking to get a new job. Men, interestingly enough, don't have that problem. Men are typically more liable to say yes to an opportunity if they even meet at least 50-60% of what the criteria is. Very different. And I've seen this happen over and over again between male and female clients. So I say this to all clients, but very specifically to my female clients: say yes before you're ready. Why? The fear is, oh my gosh, Faizun, I have never run a business. I've always been an employee. What if I fail? How do I know this is the right thing for me? This is why you are going into a franchise. This is why you are not starting a business from scratch. Because with a proven franchise, your franchisor gives you a playbook, hands you the playbook and say, this is a turnkey operating system. You follow what we tell you to do, you will be successful. There's a certain amount of guarantee they can give you based on the research you will have done by talking to other franchisees in their system right now, doing the kinds of things that you would like to do if you joined them. So that's the first piece, right? So say yes before you're ready. Second piece I say to folks, bet on yourself. You will be the best investment you will ever make, bar none. Stop, full stop, period, drop your freaking mic. You are your best investment ever, right? So a lot of people will say, oh, Faizun, I don't know, because, I have to invest this amount of money. There's a little bit of time where I won't be making any money when the business is up and running. Do I really want to do that when I could perhaps continue in my job, which frankly, of course I don't love, but at least it brings me money. There's not going to be that gap. So I think this is a scenario where, Ken, the conversation is more, you could do that. Ask yourself though, why did you came to me in the first place? Should you get laid off from your job, as so many millions of people are, your company will do that without a second thought to you, because you're just a number on the balance sheet. That's all you are. You're an expense, right? If you instead took the approach of, I am my own company, I am my own brand, I'm going to invest in myself. Set yourself to be up in a position where no one can ever lay you off. You own your company. This is yours, baby. This is yours to do with what you wish, right? So the second piece, bet on yourself always. And then the third piece really and I think this is even more appropriate, Ken, given the times that we are living in with this pandemic. And that is, and I paraphrase because some other very wise person said it, I'm just paraphrasing, and that is, when the winds of change blow, are you going to build walls or are you going to build a windmill?
Oh, powerful.
You can choose to do either, right? You can say, oh my gosh, no, my God, Ken, are you mad? We're in a pandemic. I'm going to stay cloistered. I'm going to build up walls. I'm going to keep myself isolated. I'm just not going to do anything. I'll keep myself curled up in a fetal position. Could I do that? 100%. Or I could say, wow, these are some really turbulent, very devastating times for a lot of people. There's a lot of bad happening. But think how in history, in almost anything that has ever happened to humanity, the good comes alongside the bad.
Yes.
But if you're a little far-seeing, could you say, can I set myself up now to be positioned where once the bulk of this pandemic is behind us, I have positioned myself to be able to take advantage of all the good stuff that is going to happen once everything opens back up, once everyone is vaccinated, what have you. Right? So are you going to build a windmill to harness the change, or are you going to build a wall? The choice is always yours.
That's awesome. You just gave some awesome tidbits. I hope you don't mind. I've been writing them down over here because they're powerful statements. But one thing I would like to ask you, because you're just like super powerful, super encouraging in everything. And I'm sitting here getting fired up myself. I'm almost ready to start a franchise business. One thing I would like to ask you, this is always I always call this my go-to question because I find it very important. Who inspired you? Who inspired you to do what you're doing? Just to even have the drive and the determination. Who inspired you?
I'd have to say it's my father. He's always been my biggest cheerleader from ever since I was a little girl. Interestingly enough, he's been an employee all his life. And he tippy-toed into entrepreneurship at one point. and for a variety of reasons didn't feel that that was his cup of tea. In fact, in our family, Ken, I believe I am only one of two people who are entrepreneurial.
Wow.
I come from a family of advisors, lawyers, judges, doctors, engineers, teachers, educators, no entrepreneurs, except my uncle who passed away a couple years ago. So it's, I don't know, I couldn't say that the apple fell far from the tree or fell right by the tree, but he's certainly been a huge source of inspiration for me. I think fundamentally, even though he's never run a business himself necessarily, he understands internally what it takes to be able to, in many ways, sometimes depending on where you are or who you are, defying the odds of what's expected of you, depending on the times that you're living in, and to say, no, this is my path, and to forge forward. So I would say my father.
Wow, that's powerful because, again, just me listening to you is very encouraging in itself. So I always ask that question because obviously that inspiration has to come from someone. And, I am just so glad that, you took the time out to join the Behind the Inspiration podcast because you are super busy. If I could read off half the things that you're involved with, I'll be dizzy. But I just want everybody to also know that you can find any information about Faizun in the show notes on both platforms. You can find that on my Anchor podcast, which will be a link. And you can also find her on the YouTube simulcast as well with the same information and how to reach out to her. But Faizun, I just want to ask, do you have anything that you can give to, I always say, all of us are average, but the average person, we're all average, but we have extraordinary traits in us. But what could you give to someone who may not have a whole ton of money, but they want to invest in a franchise? What could you give as a tidbit, as a parting shot, if you will, to those people who are listening?
I think it's that's such a great question, by the way, Ken.
Thank you.
I think for somebody who may be interested, I'll say franchise / starting their own business, because a franchise can be a significant financial investment for the average person, to use your word. I think first and foremost, take a step back. Look into yourself and ask yourself, why do I want to do this? For me, it's interesting, Ken. I asked myself many questions before I took this path, but there were two questions in particular. Number one, what am I going to do that will create, the work that I do will create joy in my life? Number one. Number two, through the work that I do, is that creating joy in the lives of others? To me, that's very important. So every client that I've ever placed in a business, Ken, I have become friends with them. I'm in touch with them. Because I'm not in the business of selling franchises, my friend. I'm in the business of transforming lives. And that's huge. That's huge, right? And so for anyone looking to start a business, why do you want to do this? It's not easy. The life of an entrepreneur is not easy. We were chatting before the show began. Mm-hmm. I have a husband who travels all the time. I have a 7.5-year-old. She's fully virtual schooling right now. So I'm now a teacher, right? On top of all else. I'm a mom. I'm a daughter with two parents who are aging and starting to have some health issues. Mm-hmm. So I am a very much an average person myself, Ken. But in the midst of all of that, Franchise Pros is my shining star, because this is my vehicle through which I personally, in my small way, am able to create positive change in the world. So to anyone looking to start a business, what are you looking to create? And it can be anything. I want to make $1 bajillion. I want to change the world. I want to do this. I want to feed hungry kids. Whatever it might be for you, figure that end point out and then begin, is what I would say.
Wow. And on that note, Faizun, I think you have a hard stop because, again, you're super, super busy, but I am just honored that you took the opportunity and the time to join the Behind the Inspiration podcast. I want to leave on this note, and this is a quote from you. Set the world on fire by being authentically you. Set the world on fire by being authentically you. Capital Y-O-U. So again, Faizun, thank you very much for joining the Behind the Inspiration podcast. It's been a pleasure. Family, please join our Behind the Inspiration podcast via YouTube, or you can catch us on any of the podcast platforms of your choice. So again, thank you for encouraging us. Thank you for inspiring us. And thank you for motivating us to be better. Thank you so much, Faizun. Thank you, family, for listening and joining the Behind the Inspiration podcast. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.